Paul Topitzer. George Dorer.
Here.
William Walter.
Here.
Eileen O'Connor.
Here.
Mark Richards.
Here.
James Falconer. Cheryl Church.
Here.
James Staunton.
James, okay, this evening James Staunton will be sitting in for Paul Topitzer. For people who haven't been here before, we have a two-part meeting. The first part is a public hearing. We ask the applicant to come forward and make their presentation. We normally ask a few questions, and we will then read into the record all correspondence we received. We'll also solicit comments from the audience, first pro, then against. It's our goal to close the public hearing this evening, and then we will proceed to our regular meeting. During the regular meeting, we will discuss the application, and again, as always, our goal is to vote this evening on the application. There will be 5 votes cast. You need 4 votes to grant a variance, 4 out of 5. I guess the next order of business is to have George read the legal notice.
The Town of Clinton Zoning Board of Appeals will hold a public hearing Wednesday, August 21st, 2013, 7:30 p.m. in the Rose Room of the William Andrews Memorial Town Hall, 5040 Main Street, Clinton, Connecticut, to consider the following: ZBA 13-017, 0 Bluff Avenue and Butternut Road, northernmost end of Bluff Avenue, founded by New York, New Haven, and Harper Railroad Company. Bluff Properties LLC applicant, Bluff Properties LLC and Town of Clinton owners. Application for use variance for contractor's business, standards and requirements for buffer from residential district, and standards and requirements for buffer from property lines, such as map 85, block 69, lot 100, zone R10. And ZBA's 13018, 301 East Main Street, Melody Forest, applicant and owner, application for variance of qualifications for special exception for an accessory apartment to allow an apartment in a structural needs area, such as map 85, block 69, block 30, zone B4. At said hearing, all persons will have the right to be heard and written communication received. The applications and accompanying maps and correspondence are available for public inspection in the land use office of the town hall. Mark Richards, Chairman, Town of Clinton ZBA, and this was emailed to the Harbor News 2 times, Thursday, August 8th, and Thursday, August 15th, 2013.
George, thank you very much. Note, ZBA application 13-018, that's 301 East Main Street, Melody Forest, has been postponed to the October meeting. That's October 16th. All right, well, I guess the first order of business is ZBA 13-017.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes?
At this time, I'd like to recuse myself.
Okay. Mr. William Walter is recusing, and Cheryl Church will sit in for Walter.
Thank you. I'm attorney at Casella representing Bluff Properties LLC, owned by Vincent and Michele and Neri, who are with me this evening. We have a few items for your review as we proceed with the discussion this evening. First, I just have a little packet of exhibits, so we're all on the same page. Some of which are already in your packets. Some of which aren't. We also have some letters from a neighbor and some other folks in town in support of the application. Begin. So as you read in the legal notice, this is an application for the properties owned by Bluff Properties LLC at the end of Bluff Street, and also for property that's currently owned by the town of Clinton, known as the end of Bluff Avenue and Butternut Road, and we'll be talking about that in a minute. But the application basically is for several variances to allow for a contractor business and storage yard use on the property. The property is bounded on the north by the railroad tracks, basically on the east by the property owned by Bulgini, which is Neon Insulation, and on the south by residential properties at the end of Bluff Avenue. On the west, again, by residential properties where there's a larger wetland. The variances that we're requesting first are a use variance to allow this use in the R10 zone. And number 2 and 3, which are basically related, are to decrease the buffers necessary under the zoning regulations that apply to contractor storage, contractor business and storage yards. There's a whole section of the regulations just related to the standards for this type of use that will get applied as we go along. One of the important aspects of this application and permitting process for you to consider is this is really the first step in trying to get the proposed use permitted on the property. If the use variance and the buffers are approved in some form by the Zoning Board of Appeals, there will then be a requirement to go to the Inland Wetlands Commission to obtain inland wetlands approval because of the location, because the property, portion of the property is in the inland wetlands buffer. There's no inland wetlands on the property, but it's in the buffer. And then ultimately back to the Planning and Zoning Commission for special exception approval, where they'll be applying the standards that we talked about under 10.44 that apply to contractor businesses and storage yards. So this is really the first step where we're requesting a change of use for the reasons that we'll set forth in much more detail. We've provided in the exhibits just again, a copy of the application for you. And number 2 is a site plan. And I've taken the liberty of just highlighting it because it's kind of a confusing plot plan, I guess is a better term, where we can see what's really happening here with the property. And basically, the green outline is the property that either is owned by Bluff Properties LLC or they're going to try to engage the town under an agreement that they have with the town to obtain. That green outline provides the basis for where we're requesting a variance for. It includes 3 lots at the end of Bluff Avenue, the actual end of Bluff Avenue, of which they own a portion of it. The title in this area is very odd and confusing and jumbled, to say the least. They own a portion of what's known as Bluff Avenue, and then Butternut Road, I guess it is, along the north. So I took the liberty of outlining in green the area where we're essentially asking for the variance. And what we're asking for a variance for, and this is really a concept plan, so that you folks can see what the ultimate proposal is, subject again to a lot of other commissions. The wetlands is over here in the far western portion, so you can see how far the buffer extends into the property, so that'll be subject to review from the Wetlands Commission. And the pink is a proposed building to house some of the vehicles that they have, to house an office for the Neri business, which goes by the name of Old Colony Construction. And then the yellow would be the area where they're requesting outside storage. And if you've seen the property now, you know that the outside storage is kind of all jumbled all in the property, closer to the residential property. One of the goals on the south, residential property on the south, one of the goals of this application is to move the storage to its logical place, which is up to the northern part of the property, away from the residential property to the south, with a substantial buffer to the residential property to the southwest, and up along the railroad tracks where there are a number of other industrial type uses. So this is what, in concept, we're proposing. The variance is number 1, like I said, was a change in use, which allows this to happen on the property. Number 2 is there are 2 buffers that apply, so 2A and 2B. The first is 50 feet off of a residential zone and 50 feet off of a residential property. So they're the same. So 50 feet, when you take it around, leaves you with a square like this in the middle of the call them the Bluff Avenue parcels. That middle square is where the buffers would end up being. This
One
is
that is not colored in.
the one that is not colored in. I ran out of colors.
Oh, yeah, there. I don't get it.
And that's a lie, because I have warrants, but, so that's the implementation of the buffers on the site. Okay, you can see up north here, there's really no buffers, because when you go 50 and 50, it squashes out the whole width of what's known as Butternut Road. So 2 variances that are requested as part of that. They will be the plan is, as we progress along, is to put up appropriate type fencing to further buffer. We're speaking with a neighbor here before the meeting. That would be more or less under the purview of the zoning commission. But the Neris and the applicants are willing to, provide any fencing necessary to screen off what they're doing. So that's an overview of the site plan, and we're available to answer any questions that you have. But it's also important to talk about the history of this site and of this area. As you can see from the exhibits, we've provided a portion of the zoning map where the property is tucked into the far western corner. You can see the black line that is drawn is the railroad track, and the properties are where the line at the end of their asterisk leads to. Just one small pocket, really, of residential property that the town of Clinton has along the railroad tracks. There is another small pocket where Founders Village is, which is the R20 zone. But for the most part, those are the only properties on the southern side of the railroad tracks. We provided a copy of the zoning map as well. We've also provided a copy of a 1965 aerial photograph that was obtained from the DEEP. We spent a lot of time over the last couple of years working with Tom Lane to make a determination as to whether this was a legal non-conforming use on this property. This property was owned at various points by the GH Precast Concrete and used when they had their factory over, I guess, on Robin Lane, where the Elon property is now. And just didn't bear out that it was used for storage prior to the implementation of zoning regulations, which would have given us a legal non-conforming use that we then could have been asking for a variance for. So unfortunately, we were able to do that. But we believe what this shows is, at least as of the 60s and 70s, we know that this property was used by GH Precast for storage of some of their materials. And you can see that the storage spilled a little bit onto Butternut Road as well. So I think that establishes a bit of a historic precedent for this board to use in evaluating these variance requests. Additionally, the property next door, which was GH Precast, now Nelon Insulation, obtained variances over the years, including as recently as 1999, and I've included a copy of that certificate of variance, use variances to allow the activity, the commercial industrial activities to take place on that property. So that gives us frames the history of kind of the site and the area, because if you notice by looking at the zoning map and the assessor's map that we provided, this is really a narrow strip of residentially zoned property, and with the exception of the property to the west, which has a house on it that's set back substantially from the railroad tracks down here. Because these are really, if you've ever seen the old Brady map, he divided these lots. This is 5 lots, I think, lot 76, and the Neri's property is 3 lots. So this is the one swatch of residential property like we talked about. And really, none of the properties along this zone that abut the railroad tracks are used for residential purposes. Nelon isn't. To the east is Brian Pochet's mill shop, and then we have the Neri property here and the wetlands to the west. How did we get here? Well, a few different events have taken place over the last few years. We provided a copy of the agreement with the town of Clinton that has spurned part of this application. in which the town of Clinton and Mr. Neri came to terms on litigation that they had years ago related to drainage. And as part of that agreement, the town of Clinton agreed to undertake steps necessary to have Mr. Neri and his wife acquire the old road that were abandoned or discontinued, known as Bluff Avenue, the northern part of Bluff Avenue and Butternut Road. And as part of that, without making any representations, they agreed to consent to this application, which they did, with the caveat that this is the ZBA's decision. We're not meddling, we're just consenting to the fact that the Neris are going to be requesting a variance over property that may or may not now be owned by the town of Clinton. There's a lot of legal issues there.
Yeah, that's what I'm having difficulty with this, Mr. Costello. Butternut is owned by the town of Clinton?
Perhaps.
Okay. And
Perhaps.
are we requesting a variance on town-owned property for your use?
Yes, with the understanding that it wouldn't be used that way unless it was actually conveyed.
Okay.
Just like somebody, just like a contract purchaser coming in and saying, I'm buying a piece of land over here, but before I want to do it, I want to make sure that I can put a shopping center on it.
Okay. So you're not proposing to park there tomorrow?
No.
After your ownership of it?
Correct,
Okay.
correct. But that piece of property known as Butternut Road is still in an R10 zone. So in order to undertake the activities that they're proposing to undertake, they would need to obtain variance from this board. So it's a first step, and this is, like I said, this is really the first step.
And the buffers, that's where we've had some problems in the past, where, unfortunately, P&Z sets up a zone between residential and maybe commercial or industrial.
Yep.
And even if it's 50 feet, if it's not landscaped well, or somehow divided, we end up with a problem between the neighbors and the developer, let's say, the piece. Again, I'm maybe getting the little cart before the horse here, but
It's
I think that's a big concern I'm going to have personally about what type of separation we have between zones, the buffer.
Yeah.
And to reduce the buffer, we've got to make that buffer really substantial, not just a 6-foot fence.
Right.
It's not going to work for me personally, the buffer. I'm going to require a berm, some type of plantings, something to really differentiate between the two zones or between the two uses, let's say.
Well, I know that the area that, the two areas that I think deem most concern from the ZBA and the Wetlands Commission and the Zoning Commission are going to be the south and the west. The north obviously is the railroad tracks, and the east is Neon insulation. So I think if we can zero in on those two areas and enhance the discussion, it's prudent. So the south, as I said, in terms of buffers, what we basically are requesting along the south is 25 feet, which is the setback line to the edge of the building. Okay, and on the west, with the exception of the far northwest corner, the same 25 feet rear yard setback applies over there as well. Under the terms of the zoning regulation related to contracted businesses and storage yards, they want outside storage to be screened with a 14-foot high fence. Okay, so that's the type of, and Mr. and Mrs. Neri are more than willing to take whatever steps are necessary to create that kind of buffering. It's vegetative buffering, which may be applicable in the northwest corner because we have wetlands right there. So, you can see how close the wetlands come to the property line, probably less than 10 feet. The benefit is, from a neighbor perspective, there's already a buffer on the northwest corner because of the existence of the wetland pocket right there. And that already provides a bit of a buffer from the neighbor. But as I said, they'd be willing to plant, speak for you guys, but plant trees and shrubs in addition to the fencing, arborvitae's, evergreens. You know, these are the, throw in a landscape berm. And obviously, all of that would be more fleshed out during the special exception process. But if you wanted us to commit to something this evening, we certainly would.
I just think it's a good practice for all parties.
Agreed. Agreed.
Good fences and good berms make better neighbors.
Right.
Now, the town, the agreement you have here with the town, is that part of your packet?
Yes. Portions of it.
Yeah.
Relevant portion number 5.
So they're going to propose to the town meeting, obviously, to convey this land to you folks.
If necessary, right? There's a difference between whether it's been abandoned or discontinued and legal ramifications of both of those.
Okay. All right, and the hardship?
Let me make sure the hardship associated with this is,
My fact, sorry, I didn't mean to preempt anybody. James, any questions?
And I can
before we get to
answer.
hardship? Yeah, sorry. Cheryl? I will do it then? Okay, sorry.
you know, when the Neon insulation property came before this board in 1999, it's essentially the same hardship that we have today, which is really in Clinton, these properties are unique because they're residentially zoned properties that are adjacent to the railroad tracks. And as shown on the zoning map, with the exception of the one property to the west, which has a substantial natural buffer between the railroad tracks and the actual residence, there are no other residentially zoned properties on the southern side of the railroad. So that's a uniqueness that applies to these properties and to this lot. And another aspect in granting a variance that you need to consider is whether or not the application and the proposed use is in conformance with the comprehensive zoning plan, and whether it's going to have any impact on nearby property values or any public health and safety aspects. And the plan of conservation and development from the town of Clinton over the years has stressed the fact that properties near the railroad track should be used for industrial purposes, provides a tax base for the town to be able to utilize those properties, which are, let's say, inconsistent with residential use for productive means. Right to the east, looking at the two properties to the east, provides you with the perfect example of why that's the case and why it works. And with respect to impacts on neighboring properties, again, you know, we believe that the fencing, buffers, natural buffers that already exist, moving the storage to the northern part of the property to respect the buffer, 25-foot buffer for the neighbor to the south, as shown on the site plan. All of those things will, granting this variance will not have a negative impact on property values. The end of Bluff Avenue with the Neon property and the end of Robin Lane are already used for non-residential purposes. So an additional use in here that's better defined with better buffers and better access is only going to help the situation.
What size is the building? That's 50 by
Well, yeah,
35?
it's about 3,500 square feet.
Okay.
Yeah, and obviously, again, this is a concept plan. That the building is designed to meet the building setbacks. So that's something that obviously we can discuss with this board if you would like, and I think more particularly with zoning once we develop a further site plan.
And what were the applicant planning along this buttermilk to?
The Neon property?
Yeah.
Green planting.
Oh, I'm sorry. This is where I think you're proposing to park the vehicles and store equipment and materials.
Right.
And you want to block, I know the Neon property's next to it, you may own that someday. But how do you protect that? What do you propose to put up there to?
Fencing.
Yeah, we're trying to acquire.
Just tell us who you are.
Vincent Neri, applicant. We're trying to acquire the Milan property, which is pretty much a done deal.
Yep.
And we were gonna propose the same type of fencing along that property line as well. Obviously, we don't have the property in our name yet, but we'd like to, these are our neighbors here, and I think we've gotten along fine with them the last 13 years we've been operating there, and we're trying to be respectful of their privacy, and we'd like to continue that. Like, fencing, maybe some trees. I mean, there are some trees and fencing there now. We actually put a fence up for our neighbors when we moved in there. We replaced their fence for them to try to keep a buffer, and we probably continue that same harmony with the neighbors.
So the Milan piece, you're talking, that's, you refer to as 111 here on the...
Yeah. Yep, that's the Nealon piece on the assessor's map.
And you're proposing to continue that line across there,
Right.
between 103 and 110?
Correct.
Yeah, and that, if to the, that would be, that property already has a non-residential use allowed on it, the 111 property.
Right.
103 is used residential.
Right.
The reason that they're gray versus white is because those are the adjacent properties, exactly. So if we, to the extent that we needed to come back to you for a variance, or whether it's just a special exception, to provide the appropriate buffering along the south of lot 111, they're agreeable. It's a minimum 14-foot fence or.
Yeah, and if they're going to avoid the fence, it looks like Berlin Wall, for God's sake, so if you can do something that's a little more
That's if and
attractive.
when they acquire the Milan.
Right.
Or, and also, the piece that we're talking about here.
Correct.
Well, we can't talk about the asking to have a buffer, it's something I don't know.
Oh,
No,
this
okay.
piece here,
Right,
109,
right,
along there,
I understand that.
like the south and the western portion.
I had a question about if this is a construction company and the amount of traffic and noise, early in the morning or late at night, is that an issue?
I don't believe it's been an issue. Most of the time, we run our jobs off the job site, so we move in and out once. We're not like running a gravel pit or anything like that. We use it for storage and parking.
Most of our projects are,
Michele and Neri.
sorry, are over a year long, so most of our equipment stays on those trucks. But,
So it's not a daily thing of moving
no,
up and down
no,
the street
and,
at like 6 o'clock in the morning or something like that to get to the
Goes
job
in
site?
spurts.
no, there's been a couple instances, but maybe once a year, where we had to move stuff early or late, so. Never, it's not like every day.
James, any questions?
No.
Cheryl?
Do you have a specific request for that southern boundary along lot 100 in terms of a buffer?
I would personally be biased towards a berm that would be heavily planted so that you would not,
With evergreens.
with evergreens, and you just,
Something you would like? A berm would have a heavily planted.
And a 6-foot fence.
I'm sorry?
I said you could do and a 6-foot fence, or 8.
Yeah, possibly, but you can also, if you plant part of that 6-foot fence on top of that berm, so it goes away. I think it's best for both parties to have it.
This is our neighbor, right, Vincent Neri.
They'll have an opportunity to talk.
I mean, if the neighbors feel that that's necessary, because of the way that the fence is installed now, it's attached to part of their storage area. and the fence wanders over onto our property line, so it might be disruptive to them if I had to shift it and build a berm. I'm sure we could do something that would be, you know, some trees or something that would.
The only thing, Vincent, is they're not there forever. The next homeowner, what happens there? So that's what we're trying to avoid. The next person buys it and says, it's this mess, or, you know, it's this 14-foot chain link fence that's got green.
Oh, we're not talking about a chain link fence.
No, I understand, but you see where I'm going with this. I think if we try to plan something ahead of time and really minimize any potential problems in the future, for really minimal cost.
I agree. You could incorporate some kind of berm there. There was some, I was trying to explain, we had taken a bunch of the trees down before because they were.
Oh, I don't need the trees.
Knocking their fence down, and, you know, but, yeah, we understand you want a buffer there, we could include something in our plan.
Okay.
And did you get the other letters for, you had other letters?
Yeah, I submitted, I think, 4 or 5.
What's that?
The letters.
Oh, in support?
Yeah.
I do have another question, and I went by this today, because it's been a while. And I was curious about where, if indeed you feel that all the neighbors are properly aware of the situation. Because I noticed today that the sign was way in the back of your property, not out front.
There's 2 signs.
Okay.
One was in the back and one was on the side.
Yeah, basically, one was on the Bluff properties and one was on the Butternut properties.
Okay, so Tom, you feel that it was posted, I was just curious because, you know, you have to drive where I came from.
Neighbors did call in about it.
Pardon me?
Neighbors have called in about it.
Okay, so they're all aware.
of it.
The neighbors are all aware of it. Okay, that's good.
Okay, if no more questions, we'll read into the record all correspondence.
Thank you. Answer any follow-up questions that you have.
This is a list of documents received through June 18, 2013. The documents from this list will be read into the record upon request, and documents received after this time will be read into the record, and all the documents are on file in the Land Use Office. June 4, 2013, document letter to Casella, summary. June 3, 13, staff review, 29 comments. June 6, email to Casella, summary for postponement of public hearing to the lack of posting of property. Would anyone wish to have a document from this document list read into the record? Okay, this is a list of documents received from June 18th, 2013 through July 16th, 2013. Documents from this list will be read into the record upon request, and documents received after this time will be read into the record, and all documents are on file in the Land Use Office. July 15th, 2013, document letter from Fritz, summary, town consents to variance proposal. July 16th, document B100A, summary, the Connecticut River Area Health District project approval, storage only, no buildings. July 16th, email to Casella, summary, postponement of public hearing on 7/17/13 due to lack of quorum. And July 16th, memo from Fire Marshal Shrimp, no comments or concerns at this time. Would anyone wish to have a document from this document list read into the record? So list of documents received from June 18, 2013 through August 20, 2013. All documents are filed in the Land Use Office. No documents received. Okay, this is dated August 21st, 2013 with regard to this application. I have reviewed the application plan of Bluff Properties LLC, Vincent Neri, regarding the property of Bluff Avenue in Butternut with support to request for use of the properties and variances. David Bogini, 9 Robin Lane. July 15, 2013, regarding this application, I have reviewed the application, plan of Bluff Properties LLC, Vincent Neri, regarding Bluff Avenue in Butternut with support to request for use of their properties and variances. Sincerely, it's like Greg Gay, 47 Kelsey Town Road, for property on 341 East Main Street. August 15th, regarding this application, I would also point out that I am writing in support of application of Bluff Properties LLC regarding the property at Bluff Avenue. I would also point out to the board that this request is consistent with the plan of development for the town of Clinton. This property abuts railroad right away. I previously served as vice chairman of Clinton's Planning and Zoning Commission, and I was involved in revisions and update of the plan of development in 1990. The 1990 plan specifically encouraged industrial development along the railroad and I-95. The 2000 plan of development for town of Clinton further supported that position, specifically noting, quote-unquote, industrial development is concentrated along the corridors by railroad and along I-95. I'd also point up that Clinton truly needs to encourage new businesses to come to this town, and more importantly, keep existing businesses from moving out of town. This business needs to expand and has proposed a responsible and logical plan that will allow it to stay in Clinton. This location is consistent with the town's vision, and this company is an asset to our town and our civic organizations. I would encourage this board to support this application. Kimberly Simoncini, 64 Grove Way. Dated August 15th. Regarding this application, I reviewed the above reference application of the plan of Bluff Avenue Properties LLC, Vincent Neri, regarding the property of Bluff Avenue in Butternut, and support the request for the use of the properties and variances. Sincerely, Stephen Hayes, Hayes Corporation. August 20th, regarding this application, I'm a local business owner and lifelong resident of town of Clinton. In my opinion, that the application by Bluff Properties is consistent with the town's intended use of the property, especially being located next to the railroad. As long as I can remember, there has been no residential use of this land, and in fact, I've always known it to be used as industrial, including G&H Precast, Neon Insulation, and a millwork company. Adjacent property includes Grove Gardens and Sound Petroleum. I've looked through the application of Bluff Properties LLC regarding the property at Bluff Avenue and Butternut Road, and believe it should be approved as submitted. Richard Pinder, Sr. August 21st, regarding this property, I reviewed the application, plan of Bluff
Excuse
Property.
me, you've already read that into the.
Yeah, copy?
Yes. We have received that by email
Yeah.
earlier.
Is that it?
Yeah. I think that's right.
Yep, the last is the packet that they just emailed.
Right. Yeah. All right, thank you, George. Would anyone in the audience like to speak in favor of the application? Yes, sir.
Good evening, Chairman Richards.
Yeah.
You're not going to need me to get closer. Good evening, Chairman Richards and the board. I've lived on Bluff Avenue since 1981.
Oh, can you give us your name, sir?
Richard Burgess, 30 Bluff Avenue.
Okay.
That area has been a hodgepodge of fences and poor zoning since when that whole area was built in the 60s around a bunch of cottages that were on that road. I, for one, when I decided to survey my property, found out that the fence that was put up when I bought the house in 1981, and I didn't check for almost 20 years, was 7 feet away from the edge of my property. The whole place is like that down there. That area that this gentleman wants to expand his business on, I'm going to talk from two different points. I'm a businessman in Connecticut as well, and a businessman in Clinton. I applaud anybody's effort that's going to do what they think that they need to do to make their business prosper and grow. He's found a nice little spot back there. That area has been, ever since I've been there, and everybody I've talked to, and there's only 3 or 4 other people that have been there longer than I have, that has always been 2 things: commercial and abandoned by the town. I've never seen a town truck do anything on what's called Butternut Lane. And furthermore, Butternut Lane is actually where the berm is that the Amtrak put up. It's not even where it really is. It's part of, if you look closely at those maps, as I did, that area is about 8 feet on the other side where it is. It's a big mess down there. This gentleman wants to come in there, clean it up, make a nice facility down there. I don't think, you want to put more trees on there, that's fine. I don't think, we don't care really about trees. What we care about is a responsible neighbor, and that's what we have with these guys. I was happy. When a tree fell down in my yard during Sandy, he was the first guy who says, what can I do to help you? I said, I'm going to cut the wood up. If you could take this stump away, that would help. And he did. This is a neighbor. I live 2 houses down from the property. I'm not saying I don't care what he, and I know you guys have all sorts of regulations to go through, but don't make him go through a bunch of hoops to finalize and to legalize what people have been doing down there for the last 50 years. He's a wonderful neighbor. I think he's got a great business, and he's doing a great job trying to grow it. And some of those letters saved me a little bit more time, because I agree with all that stuff. That's what the town wants, that whole corridor right there. It's not going to be used. Nobody's going to put a house there. We have no problem with it. Whether it was G&H precast or whatever. It's always been what it is. I wheel my wheelbarrow through and find a place to dump my lawn clippings at the end of the day. It's a chance for me to walk through and go to the golf course and take a walk at night. No matter who's owned it. And these guys are going to improve on the property. They're going to add to the tax roll. They're going to make some more money for the town. And I haven't talked to any neighbor in the whole neighborhood, and I talk to them all. Mark, you know how I am. Nobody has any problem with any of this stuff. Thank you.
Anyone else who speak in favor of the application?
Yeah, well, I've been there.
Just tell us who you are, too.
Pardon?
Could you tell us who you are?
Oh, Roberta Richter.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's your address?
I can't, 43 Bluff.
43.
I'm right where they want to put the,
Okay, thank you.
yeah. But I mean, you know, a fence would be fine. I don't need any trees. I don't need any, I don't need that.
Enough trees over there.
I have enough trees. My house is all in the trees. But, no, you know, they've been very good, and if I call up and say there's a problem or anything, or if I see kids down there, I usually call her at the office and tell her, you know.
We're neighbors.
Good. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Anybody else like to speak in favor? Mr. Neri.
Yeah. Carl Neri, 64 Broadway. You know, spent my whole life here. And, our summer cottage, which we converted, is on the next street over. And when I used to go pick blueberries, or I would go across the track, right where that property was. There was an opening there. Go across the track, and there's a little stream, and we'd have our picnics up there. Back in around when I was like 14 or 15, prior to me getting into construction business and developing, there was a concrete form company there. And then I think that's when the G&H guys, right, came to work for that company. And then when the boom started to come in the 60s, which is about the same time I put the first subdivision that came through planning and zoning, because we didn't have planning and zoning before that. And when the big boom came and they came up with this idea of using these precast entry units, that's when they started doing that work. And they had storage on both sides of that path when you go down the road, right? Some of the time it was covered by the woods. And in fact, the stuff that was thrown into the woods there, pieces of concrete, you know where they are? They're on the embankment on the Indian River on the fire company side, where they actually dumped them, right? A horrible mess still there to today, okay? So that place has been operated as a commercial operation, right? No matter what anybody says, I have personal knowledge of it. I know that there's some aerial pictures that show trees there. I just got into a situation in North Haven, right, where I had to come in and do some work, and it was covered with trees. And they cut the trees down, and guess what it was? A dump site. It had propane tanks in there, pieces of houses, refrigerators. So just because there's woods on an aerial doesn't mean that it wasn't used for that purpose. Now, I have personal knowledge that that's where they took all the broken units that couldn't, they didn't make it through the manufacturing cycle, and they would just dump them there, okay? With the idea someday, I guess, breaking them up. And then somebody came up with a bright idea to bring them and put them down along the embankment of the river down here, which now we gotta take them all out. That's looks horrible. So, yes, he's my son. Yes, he used to work for me. Decided to go on his own, just like lots of young people do, right? He's doing a great job, and I'm for it.
Okay. Can you park some more vehicles on the 64 road, please?
Excuse me?
I do like the idea of Mr. Neri paying more taxes, though. Mr. Burgess made that point, I think.
No, you didn't take it when I was talking about putting my addition on.
No, we got part of it. We got part of it. All right.
It's all in good fun now.
Any more comments for? Anybody like to speak in opposition? Nobody? Okay. You want to close the public hearing?
No, you want to adjourn to consider his requests.
Oh.
Tom,
Oh, yeah, Tom, I'm sorry. Anything you want to add, Tom, at all? I know it's been a long, drawn-out discussion over the several months and maybe years. You were a young man when you started. Okay, so we're going to have an adjournment so we could address the recusals. Okay. So we got a motion for adjournment. So moved by George, seconded by Eileen. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Okay.
Just a moment.
So now we have to open.
And close it. Ooh, didn't work. By George, second was Eileen.
Eileen.
You need to vote.
We did.
You did, I didn't hear.
Unanimous. Okay, this is our regular meeting of the Zoning Board of Appeals. And once again, we have to take attendance to make sure we're at a regular meeting.
Paul Toppin, sir. George Dorr.
Here.
William Walter.
Well, he recused himself, so Bill's in the audience. right
He's
now.
not here right now.
Yeah.
Okay, Eileen O'Connor.
You say
Mark Richards.
here.
James Buckner. Cheryl Church. Here. James Johnson.
Once again, James Stawn is sitting in for Paul Toppitzer, and Cheryl Church is sitting in for William Walter. Okay, we have an application before us and a
Wait a
request.
minute, I think you got that
Where's that?
wrong.
So James is for Paul, Cheryl's for Bill.
Okay.
Okay, we have a request for some recusals of our regulations.
I do.
I do have that, but
Okay.
okay, this is a request for excuse of the following elements of Section 4 procedures of the Clinton zoning regs of ZBA 13017 Bluff Avenue, Butternut Road, Properties LLC, Town of Clinton. It's the request for exclusion for Section 4.23, Section 4.24, Section 4.25, Section 4.26.
Okay, we have a motion by George to grant excusals for those elements of the zoning, and seconded by Eileen. Is there any discussion regarding that? If not, all in favor say aye.
All right.
Okay. now we have to adjourn the regular meeting to go back to the public hearing. We're going to talk about this at the end of this meeting. Okay, a motion by George again to adjourn this regular meeting. Eileen will again second it. Again, any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye, okay. It's real cumbersome, I apologize. We're going to talk to Tom how we're going to change this with P and Z. It's, I know.
Okay, here we go again.
Okay, now we're back to our public hearing portion of the evening. And we have an application before us. We have now heard the applicant. Is there any further questions for Mr. Cassell or Mr. and Mrs. Neri? If not, we get a motion to adjourn, close, the public hearing. Moved by George, again, seconded by Eileen. Any discussion? All in favor of closing the public hearing, say aye. Aye, opposed, none. Okay. Public hearing portion is closed. Now,
Okay.
you folks can certainly sit here and listen to us, but no further inputs allowed. You know, we're going to have our discussion here in a minute. Thanks for coming down.
Thank you so much.
Okay? Okay, we're back to our regular meeting. All right. I think we've heard there's a piece of property here at, let's call it number 100 here in our map, that is owned by Bluff Avenue, which is Mr. and Mrs. Neri. There's also a portion of this, the Butternut Road, which is owned by the town of Clinton, we think. And the town of Clinton, the Board of Selectmen, that is going to propose to the local body, the town committee, that this property be given to, I guess, not sold, to Bluff Avenue Partnership. I think there's some requirements or some drainage issues that have to be handled by Mr. Neri to make this happen, but in essence, if he does certain things, the town is proposed that he have Bluff Avenue. He's proposing to build a building on this property, which is residential, but has been used for industrial, commercial uses for a number of years, if not as long as some older residents can remember. The two parts is, one is the use, of course, and the other is the buffers. They want to shrink the buffers because of the narrowness, and they try to maximize the size of the building, which is understandable. But as I mentioned several times to Mr. Cassell and Mr. Neri, that I'm really concerned about protecting the neighbors. We've had a problem, as you know, on Bonnie Lane. It's been going on for years. Just think if we could, I don't mean to be excessive, but just have something substantial that protects both parties, eliminate potential litigation in the future. So that's where I'm coming from. Does anybody, first of all, have a problem with the use variance? Does anybody?
No, as long as everything goes through the town.
Well, that's
it's
another issue.
positive.
Yeah, right.
It's a positive step for the town.
Okay, thank you. Oh, it's really legalizing what's been there and has been there for years and years and years. James, you looked a little hesitant. Are you okay with use variance?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Just so you didn't. Okay. Now, the setbacks, or I guess the buffer setback, which is 50 feet between this type of use and residential. They want to decrease it to 25 feet.
No, I have a question. Because I'm not, maybe I'm not reading this right. Is it a five foot on here proposed?
Well, I think it's a shed that they're moving, and we can clarify that through Tom. Tom, could we ask you a question, just to clarify? I know I never saying it. I think there's
building I'm talking about is the peak. Storage outside. So there's no storage
I
anymore.
think the storage is being moved, I thought.
It's the point of order.
Where's the plan shows the building?
No,
There's another one that shows the building line, proposed building.
Like the site plan?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Big packet?
Fine, it's right in front of George.
I'm sorry.
I mean, we're not able to ask the
I know.
applicant, but we asked Tom, and Tom can. I saw that, I thought I heard them say something about moving the shed.
Oh, it's a yard, not a- Oh, so they're proposing that, and what is, what's the regulation for that? 50 feet, that's what this is.
This is now 5 feet
From the property line.
5 feet from the railroad.
Railroad in
What?
the north end of
Right here.
the residential zone on each side
Right, right.
for. It's a crosshatch area, it's probably about 45, 50 feet. It's about 50 feet on the east side and looks like around 42 or something on the west.
Mhm.
And there's nothing there. Where is that?
So, Tom, just to clarify for everyone, the 25 feet, the reduction from 50 to 25 is on the western and southern
Mhm.
portions, and the reduction from 50 to 5 feet is along the northern.
And then a small portion on east and west.
Right, at the end of Butternut.
In the
which is
butternut.
Not the building, but the storage of equipment.
Right, structure.
So is it right here?
Yes, in fact, this is pretty clear. It's like the 5 feet along the back here, which is the railroad here,
Okay.
the east end of Butternut, and along the Neon
So
property.
the only, this is residential.
Yes.
So that would be, if,
This is what.
okay, so it's owned right there, yes. Okay, I'm just wondering.
Sure.
The residents.
So going back to the use variance. Again, no one's got a problem with that. You want to take one at a time? Want to make a motion to grant the use variance? Or do you want to do the whole thing together? I mean, or both of them, but. Well, we'll put together, it doesn't matter, I'm just thinking,
Yeah.
if you, I'm going to
Okay, let's do it.
lobby for
separate.
conditions on the
Let's
buffer.
do it separate.
Okay, so I'll make a motion that we grant the use variance for ZBA 13017, Bluff Avenue, and Butternut Road, that hardship has been shown. It has been that use for ages.
Yeah.
For that reason alone.
All right, George is making a motion that we grant section 24.1470. Is that the use for contractors' business on this property?
Okay, I'll second.
Second by Eileen. Any discussion? If not, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? None? Okay. Second part of that is the buffer requirement. And that's what I was, I'm in favor of the buffer. I'm just want a
You know
buffer.
what it is.
I want to make sure we have a buffer, which I'm going to advocate, like a berm with planting of pines. Doesn't have to be outrageous, maybe a 6 feet on top of the berm. So we get to that, and then we hide the berm, the fence somewhat with some pines. I don't mean thick, but just something to break the eye, just so you're attractiveness.
Well, it's because.
So you'd like to live next to it then?
Right, so residential street, and
Right.
that's,
That's what I'm just trying to do. Again, nothing outrageous.
How can we state that and assure that it's gonna be?
Well, we can have Tom's somewhere of our, it's somewhat subjective, I mean, I understand. If I said we want a 6-foot berm, tapered up, tapered down, with a 6-foot fence, and planting, does that make sense, Tom?
I'll hide the plant.
And if we plant some couple pines up there, providing, whatever it may be, does that make sense?
It's really hiding, and it's just making it a nice wall.
Make a green wall out of it instead of just called a berm wall. I don't think it would, some material got the job, maybe throw in there, hide it, bury it, put a couple of topsoil on it.
And also the buffer in the fact that it's not shed. It's only one building.
Yes. Yeah.
You know that, it's different. Yeah, just want to make sure there's no shed there.
It's in the storage area.
Or storage.
Now, this building is an office building?
Right.
Office and for equipment.
Right, like a garage.
We almost have to design it
Yeah,
to assure it underneath.
I know.
We're not gonna, that isn't our church.
No, I know, it's like, maybe Tom could help us out, because it is somewhat subjective, that's to say.
Right.
I'd like to see 6-foot berm, 6-foot fence, plan in front of that fence, and then all of a sudden now we've got 14 feet
Right.
separation.
We get an idea that might solve somewhere if the vegetative berm. If you put a berm in, it comes down to, the shape, the height, what you have to do it. One of the scenarios is we do like 70% of the 14-foot high fence, be screened by vegetation, where they put the berm in or whatever, but it gets up to that height, the high dimension of the fence.
Yeah. And I'm not suggesting that the height's
And
going to be
that's
tomorrow, I don't have to buy
well, it's a
plants.
definitive thing for me to enforce, so I know where the line is.
So what was that suggestion then, Tom? That,
Like 70% of the height of the 14-foot fence has to be covered by vegetation.
okay,
Plantings to screen.
all right. That make sense, everyone?
Yes, but, I mean, because it's residential, the end is business, great for the town, good for the neighbors.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, he has said something to enforce, like you said.
All right, okay, so Tom, what we're saying, Tom, is that it calls for a 14-foot fence,
Right.
but we are then going to condition the approval on screening at 70% of 14 feet, whatever that may be, planting,
So you don't look at.
whether it's by berm or by size of tree.
Right.
Okay.
It's on the south and,
Yeah, we'll specify on the south and the west. All right. So, should we put that in motion, can we, George? Did we already?
Well, I have most of it.
Okay.
70% of the height of the 14-foot fence must be screened with vegetation by berm or size of tree on the south and west of the property
Okay.
lines,
Okay.
at the south and west property.
All right. That makes sense, everyone?
That's
I think it's a nice looking, to make it more attractive looking, more natural looking, and we have that separation, we don't have a problem in the future. Well, we have a motion, we have a second?
No, you don't have a motion.
George made that motion.
Oh, I didn't hear it, he was very quick.
George made the motion, Eileen seconded it? Okay. Any discussion on that?
it's for the buffer.
This is the buffer.
Yeah.
Yes,
The grant with the 70%, et cetera.
correct. All right, so we,
Second was Eileen.
Eileen, James okay? Cheryl okay? Eileen?
All fine.
All in favor, say aye. Aye, opposed? None? Okay, congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Happy building.
Appreciate your
Happy planting.
time.
Yeah.
It's tough to go to what museums.
Oh, I know, yeah, we started the process.
Well, you've begun.
Appreciate public service. I serve over in Westbrook on ZBA. Sometimes it feels like a thankless job.
Oh, yeah.
I appreciate what you guys do. I hate the 12:30 midnight one.
Well, we get those occasionally, we try to avoid those ourselves.
Not
anymore.
So Vincent, how many times have you been affected with ZBA?
Are you guys? All over mine? It's
By your audience.
Constituents.
I think Westbrook's a little more than that.
Seen that crochet hearing.
Must miss that one. No, but we have had,
Well, now we
No,
go.
you're on
I'm sorry,
record.
I'm sorry. Yeah, that's,
thank you,
All right.
appreciate it. Thank you.
okay, the next order of business is to note that ZBA application 018 again, which is 301 East Main Street, Melody Forest, has been postponed to our October 16th meeting. The next order is to approve the minutes of our June meeting. See, that we were not here in July.
Okay, wait a minute.
Okay,
I
I was catching up.
Request for excusal for 301 East Main Street, are you tabling that?
Yes, we are.
October? The deliberation for 13-8 has been postponed to October 16th. No.
Okay, can we get approval of our June 19th, 2013 minutes of our public hearing and regular meeting? We have a motion by George to approve the minutes. Both the public hearing.
Wait a minute.
George, will you
You gotta
offer this
put that
back?
bill is back. Actually joined the meeting, he wasn't here. June 19th. Okay, June
Oh.
19th, public and,
And regular meeting, George has proposed that we approve the minutes as presented. Seconded by Bill Walter. And all in favor say aye. Aye.
I'm abstaining.
Abstain, you were not here. Just Cheryl's not here.
actually, Cheryl's not seated, is she?
Oh, I'm sorry, she's not, because we just lost the okay.
I wasn't here either.
So James also
Oh, so James is abstaining.
abstained.
So those two are done.
Yep,
And July 17th was my meeting. That's
no
just-
meeting. Right. Executive session, there's nothing, I don't.
Yes, yes,
Right,
yes,
you want to talk
yes.
about Penny Liberty?
Hold on. Yes, but you have to move to go into executive and to invite us if you so choose.
Do we want, I mean, is there something we should discuss?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Okay.
Should we go to executive session? No, I know you've been having.